Thank you all for your patience and indulgence. It took a little longer than we planned. The committee will now resume, and our next questions will come from the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all on the panel for your patience today and continuing to persevere as we go through this day. Speaker Gingrich, you've referred to this trend we're discussing today as a, quote, emerging dictatorship of district court judges, end quote. And you posted on X that the No Rogue Rulings Act, quote, would be an appropriate first response to the district judges who are trying to be mini presidents totally beyond their constitutional authority. I totally agree with you, Speaker Gingrich, and the No Rogue Rulings Act would be an impactful first step in addressing this problem. I was proud to vote in favor of it when this committee marked it up, and I later joined on as a co-sponsor and look forward to at some point having the opportunity to vote on the House floor. But Speaker Gingrich, specifically, do you believe there are any additional legislative steps that need to be taken to address the problem of activist judges acting beyond their constitutional authority as you described in your post?
Well, I would just say for the moment that this issue of district judges becoming alternative presidents and issuing nationwide injunctions is such a central point to where we are, that solving this, first of all, if we can successfully limit the district judges, we will have sent such a strong signal of rebalancing the Constitution that I think it will sober up everybody in the judicial side. I mean, in the future, there are some key issues. The whole notion of whether judicial supremacy means supreme inside Article 3 or supreme over Article 1 and 2, I think is an issue worth taking up. But I would put that a very distant second to solving this immediate problem, because if you solve the immediate problem, you both make it possible for the executive branch to be effective, and you've sent a pretty powerful rebuke to the judicial branch that they can't overreach in what they're doing. So I would make it a sequence in that sense.
I got you. Well, as we all know, President Trump issued an executive order 14160, which was referenced earlier today, in ending birthright citizenship for children born to illegal immigrants or those on temporary visas. It was on February 5th that U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman of the District of Maryland issued a nationwide preliminary injunction against this executive order, arguing that it ran afoul of the 14th Amendment. Speaker Gingrich, do you think it is in line with the president's duties to re-examine birthright citizenship as he did with Executive Order 14160?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a legitimate function of the presidency to look at how things change and how they evolve. I suspect in the short run, this will be resolved at the Supreme Court level. And I personally believe that it's pretty hard to go back and look at the debate at the time of the 14th Amendment was adopted and somehow leap from that to a birthright situation. And in fact, they're fairly clear, for example, that people who are born to diplomats in the United States do not count as citizens. And there are other factors there, but I think the next phase of that argument is going to be at the Supreme Court level. And then I think, depending on what happens, you know what, we live in a very different era. The scale of illegal immigration, which frankly has changed. My guess is some of these debates will change pretty dramatically because President Trump is being so stunningly effective at controlling the border and pretty effective at going after illegals who are also criminal. But I do think in the long run, having somebody who deliberately comes in the U.S. just long enough to have a child, and then having had the child, maybe on a tourist visa, if you will, claiming now they have an American citizen in their family. My guess is, to the degree that that continues to evolve with modern transportation, that we'll probably revisit this issue. But first, we ought to see exactly what the Supreme Court says.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
If you'd yield to me.
I'll yield to you.
I'll follow up on that briefly. So a diplomat's child is not a citizen, correct?
Specifically correct.
So a diplomat is here on a visa and is lawfully in this country, including the spouse, typically. Would an invading army that comes with its spouses well, here occupying, let's say, Texas, would their children be covered under the 14th Amendment?
My reading of the debates about the amendment would suggest that you had to be here legally in order to be qualified to have a child who would become an American. See, you couldn't be here illegally. You couldn't be here in a situation where you would not be within American law. And I think in that sense, an invading army by definition is not here as part of the American law.
So it's a legitimate debate on the 14th Amendment
Yeah,
and
no,
where you'd be in and out.
I think it was a habit which grew up sort of absent-mindedly when there frankly weren't very many cases. And as it got to be a bigger and bigger issue, people began to say, wait a second, do we really think that in the 1860s, this is something they had in mind? And I think it's pretty hard to read the debate and conclude that they wanted birthright citizenship for non-citizens.
So now we go to the gentleman from Missouri next.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, you haven't gone yet?
No, I have not.
You sit so close.
I know.